So I'd finished 2010 on this sort of exciting note of doing my first powerlifting meet, doing really well, releasing the book, The Juggernaut Method, which, side note about that is like, I called it the Juggernaut Method. There weren't a bunch of other books out there called the something method. And since then, there's been a lot of books called the something method, so I should have TM'd the word the something method as far as books for lifting go, and I could have made dozens of dollars probably since then. But I start 2011, on this sort of high of excitement about competing in powerlifting. I began working with Josh Bryant. I also had a very cool opportunity, I think in January 2011, right to start the year, where the magazine Muscle and Fitness, one of the most famous magazines in this space, something that I think if you're the right age, you grew up reading and kind of getting motivated by that to lift weights and get big and strong. I never really had much of an interest in bodybuilding, but it was still something that I was like, wow, this is a big deal. They sell this magazine all over the world. That came about through a guy named Bob Eilenfelt. Some people may know him as the Angry Coach. It was a writer for Elite FTS, and definitely lived up to his name. He was an angry guy, but he had taken a job as one of the senior editors for Muscle and Fitness and moved out to the LA area from New York right about the time that I started Juggernaut. So I was one of the few people he knew in Southern California, so we became friends, and he created this opportunity for me, and Muscle and Fitness showed up with the photographer and the lights and all this cool stuff, and to follow me around for the day while I did the workout, and it was really a surreal experience. Something I've never I'd never had anything like that, and I probably never had anything like it since. But went in, did the workout, a similar kind of feeling of pressure that I put on myself as when I went into the first powerlifting meet. Like, you have to make this 800-pound squat or no one is going to buy your book. Well, the day they came to film, I was going to try and squat 700 for 5 in reps, which was be a big PR for me at the time. And I said, if you miss a rep here, you're going to look like an asshole. They're probably not even going to put you in the magazine anymore. So you got to do it. So I made the 700 for 5 squat. Took a lot of pictures. It was kind of this funny day at the gym because my buddies were there hanging out, and they're giving me shit behind the camera while I'm trying to make these tough, intimidating kind of faces, and that's not my personality really, but we went for it for the thing, and it opened up the book because we actually put the entire program, the Juggernaut Method, in that issue of Muscle and Fitness, and it's probably where the most people found it, and led more people to buy the book. So it's something I'm eternally grateful to Bob for. It was a really awesome opportunity, and that 700 for 5 squat was early in the training cycle. My first with Josh, as I pushed towards my second powerlifting meet, which I did in March 2011. I totaled 2165 at 308. I think that moved me up to the number 3 total in the world, behind Andrei Milanchev and a guy named Dan Kovacs in the 308s class. And I went 8 for 9 there, and I was lifting an SPF Pro-Am meet, glorious event, Days in Ballroom in Knoxville, Tennessee, and West Side was there, and big iron and mostly multiply lifters. So I lifted on the amateur day against the amateur multiply lifters. Myself, Robert Wilkerson made the first 1,000-pound raw squat there, and it was kind of this unique experience. And I think a lot of the SPF fans and lifters that were there were a bit confused by what I was doing, and probably are still confused by it, and they're thinking like, well, why in the hell is that guy taking those steps back out of the monolift? That's not how it's supposed to work. And so I'm walking my squats out of the monolift and squatting to depth and doing all kinds of weird stuff like that. But it was a very fun day. I think it gave me a real big boost in in the powerlifting community to make this big total of really high quality lifts on 865, 515, 785. Just barely missed an 800-pound deadlift. It was a good time. And so as my powerlifting career continued to grow, the Juggernaut Method book became more and more popular. I was writing a lot more articles, still not really into YouTube or anything at the time. Like, we'd do videos here and there, but YouTube powerlifting was not a thing the way that it is now. I maybe wish I would have had some more foresight for that, but we're just kind of putting up training videos, and that was fun. But so that side of the business was growing a lot, the kind of online side, and my role in the powerlifting community. But powerlifting was so much smaller then. Like, I did powerlifting at Juggernaut Training Systems, this gym in Laguna Hills, California, but we were not a powerlifting gym. I was the only powerlifter. I don't think that a powerlifting gym really could have existed, at least not at the scale that I was thinking of in 2011, because the sport wasn't big enough. When I did that first meet, the first ever USPA meet, it was 36 lifters maybe, and you could tell everyone there was a powerlifter. Like, you could tell by looking at them. Where, fast forward to 2017, 2018, 2019, and now you could drive an hour in any direction from here in Orange County every weekend and find a USPA or a USAPL meet with over 100 lifters. And, from 12-year-old kids to, your grandma is doing powerlifting, everything in between. But at the time we were a sport performance gym, I was doing this powerlifting stuff, and that was cool. But that wasn't the business, and the online stuff wasn't the business. And the in-person business, we were doing okay, but I think we actually started to break even pretty quickly after only about 6 months of being open. But getting past that to like a real profitable level was very challenging, and it was something we were struggling to do. So as the year went on, we continued to struggle with this, and it became more and more stressful. So it was working really hard, training as many people as we can, making all the calls, marketing in as hard as we could through that summer. And I did another powerlifting meet there. Squad 905 was at the time the American record at 308. So I was pumped on that. But right about that same time, Nate, who I started Juggernaut with, who had been so integral to the last 3 years of the company, or 2.5 years, and we're best friends, roommates, all this stuff, told me that he wanted to move home to North Carolina, and that was like really tough. And he was still, he gave me plenty of heads up and everything like that. So he went about it totally the right way, and I understood he wanted to be back closer to his family and do that stuff. But it was really a stressful time of like, who else can I do this with? Nate and I had a great and a complementary relationship where, my strengths could take care of some of his weaknesses, and vice versa. So this search for another coach to come in and someone began, and I, was incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to hire James Smith, the thinker. If you're familiar with him from Elite FTS, Global Sport Concepts is his company now. At the time it was called Power Development Inc. And he had been a physical preparation coach, I don't want to say strength and conditioning coach when talking about him, for the University of Pittsburgh's football team. They'd gotten a new head coach. New coach wanted to bring in his own guys. Terrible decision for that head coach. Todd Graham only lasted a year. But, he let go of James Smith and Buddy Morris, two of the greatest strength coaches in the world. But it did give me the opportunity to hire James. And in doing that, in hindsight, certainly, and I kind of knew at the time, it's probably overextending myself as or overextending the company from a financial standpoint. But it began, the next year, from this time, late 2011. I think Nate moved back to North Carolina right at the end of 2011. So that there was a couple months of overlap where both Nate and James were here. But from this time in late 2011, I think James arrived in about September, to the following year, where I got beyond a master's in physical preparation, strength and conditioning, all these aspects from getting to spend time with James. So it was just a remarkable opportunity. I can't think of anyone else who I would have been able to bring into that position who could have helped me grow as much as a coach as James did, expand my knowledge. So through all this stressful time of my business partner and my best friend, wanting to leave the company, as tough as that was and as stressful as it was, it became a great thing as from a personal development or a coaching development standpoint. But with that said, as I mentioned, we were already having a tough time kind of taking things to the next level financially for the in-person business. The online stuff was cool that I had the book and that was selling, but we were right there breaking even, and then brought in a new kind of higher priced coach, and that made the end of 2011 tough, a very stressful time where I had tried to train for another meet right at the end of 2011, and on that 905 squat a few months prior, that was great. I didn't finish the meet that as well as I would have liked to, and kind of injured my hip in it. And then this hip injury lingered for several months as I tried to prepare for another meet. My head wasn't in it. It was with the business, with the stress of Nate leaving and trying to sort that whole situation out and trying to make things go. So I lifted very, very poorly there, and it was about November 2011. Took 2 squats, missed them both, and just left. I stormed out of the meet, to be honest. A bit embarrassing looking back at it. But at that point, I was like, I can't focus on powerlifting right now. I need to focus on making this business go. So I think when I walked away from that meet, at least for the time being, and it wouldn't be the last time I would make this decision in my life, but I said I can't do powerlifting anymore. Or I'm done doing powerlifting. In my mind, I was done doing it at that time. I said I got to make the business go, and that's sort of how I finished 2011 was, all right, I did powerlifting, I squatted 900, I made this big total, that's cool, but I gotta take care of number one here, and number one is our in-person business. So it was a stressful finish to 2011. Was certainly a time of change, of transition for myself and for the company.